institution. Yes.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I take this opportunity to thank all the honorable members who have taken part in this debate on the outcome of my visit to the United States. I thank the Honorable Shri Atal Bihari Vajpayee in particular for having done me the honor of participating in the debate. The level of the debate does credit to our House, and I'm very grateful that I have this opportunity to clarify some of the issues arising out of the statement that I made before this August House. Sir, after I presented the budget of 1991, this visit to the United States was in some ways a most challenging task that I faced. But I was sustained by the powerful legacy of our freedom struggle, of Jawaharlal Nehru, who made India the knowledge power that we are today. Srimati Indira Gandhi, who made us the nuclear power that we are today. And Shri Rajiv Gandhi, who made us the IT power that we are today. India stands tall today in the Committee of Nations. We are a country today with the second highest rate of growth in the world. The world marvels and respects us for being a democracy. People ask this question and marvel how a country of 1 billion persons with such great diversity, with such great complexity, with all the religions of the world represented in its population, yet manages to flourish as a functioning democracy. People also marvel that we have probably the second or the third largest Muslim population among our citizens, and not one of them has been found to join the ranks of Al-Qaeda and such groups. The world respects India for what we are. And therefore, sir, it was for me a great privilege to represent India in talking to the various dignitaries, right from President Bush downward, and in my address to the giant session of the US Congress. Sir, issues have been raised about the basic orientation of our foreign policy. The foreign policy of our country, ever since we became an independent nation, has been designed to promote our enlightened national interest. That orientation has not changed. There is, of course, a strong civilizational influence which also guides our attitude to the world as we see it, or the world that we would like to shape, and that is as it should be. But as Panditji used to say, we live in a dynamic world, in a fast-changing world. Therefore, our approach should reflect the flexibilities which are necessary in managing a complex polity in a dynamic world. But there can be no compromise on basic fundamentals. And I assure you, sir, in my visit, I was conscious of this great responsibility as the Prime Minister of this great country, that I should not do or say anything which anyway reflects adversely on our country. So there are two types of comments that have been made on what we have done in this visit. There is one set of comments from our left colleagues whose opinions I greatly value and respect, that we are continuing the same policies as of the previous government of getting closer and closer to the United States, and that we are in danger of being submerged in that orbit under the influence of the United States. There is, however, another stream coming from benches opposite, that somehow we have compromised India's strategic nuclear autonomy. So I will deal with both these issues in some detail. So the United States is a superpower today. We want to move towards a multipolar world. But how do you become part of a multipolar world? I would like that a strong India should grow fast enough to become a powerful pole of the evolving global economy. So it is no use merely saying that we want to get away from this multipolar world. The practical strategies have to lay emphasis on building the economic strength and cohesion of our country. If India grows in the next 10 years at the rate of 8 to 10% per annum, we will probably be the third or the fourth largest economy in the world, and the world will respect us. And therefore, while we know where we want to go, our objective is a multipolar world. Our objective is to work together with other like-minded countries to manage, to promote equitable management of the global interdependence of nations, which cannot be avoided in this one world that we live in today. But that's not something going to happen overnight. Step by step, we have to move in that direction, and relations with the United States are of great importance in achieving that objective. Of course, in doing so, we must not compromise on our national honor, on our national interest, but engagement with the United States is essential in the world that we live in. This is not an alliance, this is not a military alliance, this is not an alliance against any other countries. Since our government came into office, we have entered into strategic partnerships with Russia. We have very close relations with Russia. Recently, our chairperson, Srimati Sonia Gandhi, visited Russia, and she was received with utmost warmth by President Putin himself. A few months back, I was in Europe. We signed a strategic partnership agreement with the European Union. A few weeks ago, the Prime Minister of Japan came here, and I venture to think that we have broken fresh ground in our relations with Japan during that visit. And then we have had the privilege of welcoming the Prime Minister of China. After a great deal of effort, we have broken new grounds in promoting more closer relations with that great neighbor of ours in the north. We have successfully concluded the agreement on the basic fundamental principles which should guide the delineation or the solution of the complicated border problem between India and China. Therefore, sir, I wish to dispel this illusion, and I do say so with respect because it is an illusion. We are not part of any military alliance. We are not ganging up against any other country, least of all China. And I'm being absolutely truthful that in my public discussions, in press conferences that I addressed, in my meeting with the US dignitaries, I made it quite clear that we are engaged, we want to remain engaged with China, our great neighbor. Our economic relations have greatly expanding. I see new horizons in our economic relations with that great country, and that it is our wish and desire to work together to strengthen the forces of peace, prosperity in Asia and beyond. So therefore, I wish to dispel this opinion which may exist that what we have done with the United States is at the cost of China or any other country. What we are seeking is that we need an international environment which is supportive of our development efforts. India's principal concern is to get rid of chronic poverty, ignorance, and disease, which still afflict millions and millions of our population. Great things have been done since India became independent, but that journey to get rid of poverty is still unfinished. And all the efforts that we have to make domestically, we will make to reach that goal. But also in the world that we live in, no nation today can prosper. I recall Panditji himself once saying in this, and that was a prophetic vision in 1947 when he said, in this one world that we live in, peace, prosperity, and perhaps disaster are also indivisible. So in this world, that interdependent world that we live in, we need a supportive international environment. And right or wrong, the United States influences that international environment. And therefore, I don't say that there is anything wrong for us to seek close, cordial relations with the United States while doing nothing which will affect India's dignity and honor as a sovereign, independent nation. And sir, I submit to you that I have faithfully carried out that responsibility. As regards the various issues that have been discussed, I'll come to them subsequently. But the main issue coming from the main opposition party has been that have we compromised in any ways on our strategic autonomy in the management of our nuclear weapon program. Before I deal with that, I should like to mention that before going to the United States, the leaders of the opposition, Atalji, Advaniji, and Jaswant Singh ji did me the honor, and I had the privilege of explaining to them what I would seek to achieve. I also briefed our colleagues on the left also, gave them broad indication of what was at stake, but I was not sure of the outcome, so I could not state all the things that subsequently are reflected in the joint statement. What was my concern? My objective was, other than to widen our development options, to acquire for India a larger space to achieve our national goals, to do specifically two things. Firstly, never to compromise on our autonomy in the management of India's nuclear program, the strategic program. Second, I had to recognize, I am the Minister for Atomic Energy, I had to recognize that India's nuclear power program had lagged behind. I was at one time, when I was a civil servant, I was a member of the Atomic Energy Commission way back in the 70s. At that time, the Atomic Energy Commission had set for us the target of 10,000 megawatts of generating capacity. We are today in 2005. Our capacity is less than 3,000. We have run into some problem. I pay compliments to our scientists, nuclear scientists. They have performed admirably under very difficult conditions of this nuclear apartheid with which we have had to live for the last 35 years. But energy security is the key to India's emergence as a strong, powerful nation in years to come. And we have problems. Coal is plentiful, but greater use of coal carries with it the environmental hazards, the CO2 emissions, though clean coal technologies can help manage that situation also. We are dependent on hydrocarbon imports for meeting 70% of our requirements. That's too large a dependence. Therefore, in our quest for energy security, we must widen the options that are open to us. And nuclear energy is one such option. And there, I was being faithful to the vision of Pandit Singh. You look at the resolution which was adopted by the Government of India when the Atomic Energy Commission was set up. The Atomic Energy Program of India was brought into being with an eye to create new avenues for us to generate power. That program has got into difficulties. This is no fault of our scientists. They have done exceedingly well under very difficult conditions. But we have to recognize the realities. And therefore I felt if we can find ways and means to create an environment in which this nuclear apartheid, all these restrictive regimes which have been erected in the last 35 years, which have blocked our capacity to leapfrog in the race for social and economic development through the use of high technology. If somehow we could get rid of these restrictive regimes, then we would have widened the development options in the area of energy security that India badly needs if it is to realize its economic and social destiny. Therefore, before going, I said to myself that on the one hand, we should do nothing to surrender our autonomy in the management of our strategic assets. On the other, we should find an honorable way to persuade the United States and other interlocutors to lift this nuclear blockade, which has restricted our options in the last 35 years. Sir, I say in all sincerity that we have succeeded in that objective. There is nothing in the giant statement which conveys the impression, or which should convey the impression to anyone, that we have in any way compromised our autonomy, our sovereign willpower in managing our nuclear assets. That subject was never discussed even. My concern in Washington was to impress upon the United States that if the United States genuinely felt that it had a change of heart with regard to India, then it must do something to lift these 35 years of restrictions which have hampered our quest for a faster access to nuclear energy. And this, I'm glad to say that we have succeeded in achieving that objective. Now the question has been raised, and Atalji raised this question. He said, you are going to separate the civilian and the nuclear components of our atomic energy program. Did you consult the scientists Is this feasible? I say in all sincerity that this is a question which has engaged my personal attention for quite some time. I'm not a nuclear scientist, but I have the advice of our nuclear establishment, and the chairman of the Atomic Energy Commission was a part of my delegation. And I hope I'm not revealing a secret. I think when the final draft came to me from the US side, I made it quite clear to them that I will not sign any document which did not have the support of the chairman of the Atomic Energy Commission. It held up our negotiations for about 12 to 15 hours. But ultimately we succeeded. We had a draft which had the full approval of the chairman of the Atomic Energy Commission. And therefore, there should be no doubt whatsoever in anybody's mind that the nuclear establishment of our country, of which we are very proud, that was not fully on board. After coming back, I have talked to a large number of other nuclear scientists and other scientists, and I am convinced that what we have done is in the best interest of our country. This separation that we have committed, and let me say, all our commitments are reciprocal commitments. We will not do anything unless the United States side honors its commitment. And what are those commitments? Those are profound commitments which the US has committed in the words of their own president, to give India the benefit of full civilian nuclear cooperation with all the benefits that other nuclear powers enjoy. And therefore, if that statement is translated into concrete realities, I think that will mean a new era for the growth of civilian nuclear energy sector in our country. My own vision is the next 15 to 20 years, we should add about 30 to 40,000 megawatts of nuclear capacities. And I have a vision that that will open up new vistas of opportunity in the field of high technology. Today, we have only a few high-tech firms like Bharat Heavy Electricals, like Larsen and Toubro. And if we have a large nuclear power program, ancillarization around it will grow a very large number of high-tech firms, which would enable us to leapfrog in the race for social and economic development. Separation is feasible. There should be no doubt about it that our atomic energy establishment agrees with that line. Furthermore, I would also like to say that this separation is not imposed. This separation will be decided voluntarily, solely on the basis of our own judgment. Nobody can from outside say, well, this is civilian, this is nuclear. That determination will be made by the people of India, by our government, by our atomic energy establishment. Also, it will be a phased identification. I know these things cannot be done in one go. If we are to separate the civilian and the military component of our program, it will take time. And that's why we have bought that this will be a purely voluntary decision. Secondly, it will be a phased program. It will be so phased, and you have my assurance, sir, it will be so phased that our strategic programs is fully safeguarded. So therefore, there should be no doubt whatsoever that we have done anything which compromises our strategic autonomy in the management of India's strategic nuclear assets. Atalji also asked this question about the negotiation of fissile material production cutoff treaty. Sir, in this case, I should like to point out that we have taken on no more additional commitments than the commitments that were taken on board by the previous government. And what is our commitment? We have said we will work with the USA in the negotiation of a multilateral agreement. This is not a bilateral deal between India and the United States. This is a deal which will be negotiated in the Conference on Disarmament in Geneva. Several years have passed when these matters have been discussed. There is no agreement in sight. It will take quite some time. And in any case, if the stage comes to take a decision, we will never be a party to any discriminatory treatment. And therefore, if what other nuclear weapon powers say their rights, we would insist on the same rights. So by merely agreeing to work with the United States in negotiating a multilateral treaty, we have not surrendered in any way the effectiveness of our strategic asset program. And sir, I should also like to assure this House that the three-cycle nuclear fuel cycle that we have been working out, pressurized heavy water reactors, to fast breeder program, to thorium-based reactors, we will not allow our research program to suffer in any way in the process of separation of the civilian and the nuclear program. So our research scientists should have the fullest confidence that India's research potential in this vital area of national knowledge promotion will not suffer in any way. That's a commitment that I give on behalf of the Government of India. Atalji asked, we have not been given the status of a nuclear weapon state. Shri Fernandez also asked that question. It is true, because in the international parlance, the nuclear weapon states are the ones which are identified in the NPT treaty. We are not a party to that treaty. And let us face it, that treaty cannot be negotiated overnight. What we have done with the United States is that we have virtually got all the benefits that go with being a nuclear weapon state without having the de jure status of a nuclear weapon. And I think that's something which is of comfort to us. So the fact that we are not recognized de jure as a nuclear weapon state, this was not on my agenda also, because I knew that much, that international treaties cannot be rewritten overnight. But we have now the commitment of the United States that not only it will dismantle its own restrictive regimes, but that it will use its influence with its allies and friends to dismantle these restrictive regimes which have in the past hampered the growth of India's civilian nuclear program. I was very clear in my mind that there may be uncertainties in the US Congress, although the President was gracious enough to say that he will use all his influence to ensure that the Congress legislates as he wants. But there are uncertainties. I cannot predict what the Congress will do. And therefore, I insisted that it is not enough that the United States should commit itself to get its own domestic legislation modified, but that it must use its influence with other countries, its allies and supporters, to do the same. And even if the Congress of the United States does not pass, well, we have, I think, the commitment of the US government, and that itself means something. We have been wanting more uranium for our nuclear plants. We have gone to other countries, and everybody says, yes, they sympathize with us, but that we must get the Americans on board. Now that the Americans on board, I think the fuels question for our reactors would be a thing of the past. I very much hope so. So what we've got in this, through this joint statement, is something tangible. Atalji also asked this question. We have not been recognized as a nuclear weapon state. We have been merely recognized as a nuclear power with advanced nuclear technologies. But there are other countries like Brazil and others. Will we get a treatment like Brazil? I think if you read the statement carefully, we've got a much better treatment. We have, I think, an explicit commitment from the United States that India should get the same benefits of civilian cooperation as advanced countries like the United States enjoy. So I think that itself should provide an effective answer of the extent of opportunities and possibilities that are now on the horizon. Mr. Speaker, sir, I believe I have tackled both sets of comments, one coming from our colleagues from the left, the other coming from mainly from the main opposition side. There were some questions raised with regard to the role of agriculture. And let me say that I was very conscious. In fact, the first thing that I said to my officials before going to Washington is there anything that we can do jointly with the United States to promote food security and agricultural security in our country? And it then occurred to me that agricultural research, the state of agricultural university, the state of extension work in our country is not up to the mark. Dean Sahib referred to the Punjab agriculture. I was at one time associated with the founding of the Punjab Agricultural University when Sardar Pratap Singh Cairo was the chief minister. And I know, for example, the role that was played by Indo-US cooperation in giving rise to first-rate agricultural university, whether Pantnagar or Ludhiana. But one has to recognize that many of these universities, their research work has reached a plateau. And therefore, through the knowledge initiative in agriculture, we have, I think, opened up a new era of research cooperation, which I hope will lead us to the frontiers of human knowledge in all sciences which have a bearing on our agricultural prosperity. There is nothing in this joint statement which says that we will open up our borders to unlimited flow of American goods. Those issues will be dealt separately in the WTO. Those issues were not discussed in my discussions with President Bush, and you can rest assured, and this is something which the chairperson reminds me every day, our first commitment is to India's farmers, to small and marginal farmers, the needs of food security, preserving the livelihood strategies of our farmers is our utmost concern, and we will do nothing which compromises the livelihood security of India's farmers. Sir, questions were raised about the membership of the Security Council. It is certainly true that the United States has a different viewpoint. They are not supporting our resolution. This was known to us before I went. And I did raise that matter with the President, and I also raised that matter in my address to the joint session of the Congress. And I was very surprised the amount of applause I got from the congressmen and members of the Senate on that particular point. I don't want to divulge what the President told me, but I have not given up the hope that when ultimately some concrete action is taken, India's claims will not be ignored. In this giant statement, you have a statement attributed to the President himself that the international system must adapt itself to the rise of India's growing power. So I think we are not there right now, and it would be wrong on my part to claim that we have the US support, but I think when the time comes, I have reasons to believe India's claims can no longer be ignored. The other things that was raised was the question of the Iran, Pakistan, India pipeline. Sir, on this point, I have been quite clear. On my outward journey, when I was going to Washington, I was asked this question by our correspondents, and I had explicitly stated this is a matter for us, Pakistan and Iran, period. The United States has no role in it. And I can assure you, nowhere in my discussions this question cropped up, nor did I give any promise to anyone in the United States that we will not work to make this project a reality. I did say when the Washington Post editorial board interviewed me, they asked me this question: you are on the one hand wanting nuclear power, you are also asking for this gas pipeline. Why do you need both these things? And I said, there is uncertainty about this gas pipeline. We are still in a preliminary stage, but I did say we need that gas desperately. And the House has my assurance that our government is committed to make the gas pipeline a reality. But it would be wrong on my part to convey the impression that we are there. There are problems. We will have to look at the feasibility. We will have to look at the financing of these things. We will make sincere efforts to resolve those issues. At the National Press Club, I did say that we have civilizational links with Iran. And I said, we have the second largest Shia Muslim community in our country, and that we can claim to be a bridge in reconciling these various differences that have arisen between Iran and other countries. I did not act as a representative of a supplicant state. I was not there to sell India. I stood by what our national policies are as approved by this august House. And I believe, sir, that by and large, I have carried out the mandate that was given to me. Sir, I thank you for giving me this.
Very much. It's entirely for him. Entirely for the Prime Minister to respond. I cannot compel him to respond.
Okay.
While participating in the debate, I had mentioned some other points. I'm not going to that. I had asked about the bilateral, the Indo-US Democracy Initiative. On that point, the nation needs some clarification, and the Honorable Prime Minister may clarify that.
Sir, I'm very grateful to Dr. Paul for having raised that point, because this matter has figured in the press, and I'm very glad that I have this opportunity to clarify the position. Sir, it is certainly true that there is a great support and respect for India, not only in the United States, but elsewhere in the world, because we are a functioning democracy. Wherever I went, whether to the Congress, to the Senate, to Foreign Relations Committee, to the House of Representatives International Relations Committee, people applauded the fact that we are a functioning democracy with all our complexities, with all our diversities. And what is it that we have agreed? We have agreed that United States and India would, in their respective spheres, help those countries which want those help. There is no imposition, there is no question of our, for example, being forced to be a partner in any act of aggression against any other country. There is no question that we will ever entertain even that sort of thought, but we have an ITEC program of our own. Our election commission is respected all over the world. If some countries want our help in managing their election, in voter registration, in setting up an audit office in which we have great expertise, we would be providing them. The only commitment that we have is that we will be making a small contribution of $10 million to the UN Democracy Fund to be administered by the United Nations and not by any other mechanism.
That's a question. Speaker, sir.
It's entirely for the Honorable Prime Minister.
Speaker, sir, I would like to know from the Honorable Prime Minister, when he was speaking, he mentioned about uranium supply to our nuclear power reactors in the country. Sir, as you already know, that we've got large deposits of uranium in the state of Meghalaya, in the state of Jharkhand. So we could come up with our own reserves and develop them. So what steps is the government taking so that we can become self-sufficient in uranium, so that we could build up our own power reactors, as we have already got the technology to make our own reactors? Thank you, sir.
We are doing all we can to exploit the resources that we have. There are some difficulties. I don't want to go into those difficulties, but I entirely agree with the Honourable Member that we should do all that we can. Only yesterday, I sent my Minister of State to Jharkhand, where, for example, there have been some problems. We are not able to exploit those resources. So you have my assurances, whether it is in Meghalaya, whether it is in Andhra Pradesh, or in Jharkhand, wherever I think we have uranium resources, we are, I think, actively engaged in seeing that these resources can be exploited to us.
Mr. Tobdar, yes. One by one I can go. Yes.
Of the statement is availability of U-37 for our atomic reactors. But given the hegemonistic attitude and the thrust of the American policy, what do they get from us in reciprocation? As it has been stated, that is a reciprocal thing. Is it only a change of heart and just a goodwill mission and a joint statement out of that?
Sir, all I can say is that I have not done anything which is not reflected in this joint statement. There is no secret pact, there is no secret understanding. I have truthfully stated at great length whatever was agreed. So, no, I don't want to be accused of being a reader of what is in people's mind. But I think the United States government recognizes that it is in their interests that a country of 1 billion people, a functioning democracy, should grow. We can be and we will be a factor for peace, progress and stability, not only in Asia, but in the rest of the world.
Kanduri, General Kanduri.
Thank you, sir.
I think that's all enough. Yes.
So one is that you, if I understood correctly, you said
last.
that even if U.S. Congress does not accept what is being stated, the U.S. government will still be on board. Is that my understanding correct? And second point, sir, I had raised this issue made a comment on this in my speech also. You have again stated that the building of present India, strong India, starts from 1947 and ends up in 91. Nothing has happened between 91 and 2004?
I think that's not a presumption which I would like you to carry. I think as a country, our effort has been to manage change with continuity. So I'm not saying that everything that has happened today is because of what I have done or what our government have done. But who can deny the contribution of Panditji, Indiraji, Rajivji? And I also say that there were some good things also done in the NDA regime also.
Yes.